When renovation projects go wrong, they don't just test your patience, they can land you in serious legal trouble. From spotting unfair clauses to handling disputes, this episode arms you with the tools to stay protected. We're joined by Martin de Ridder, Managing Director of Ansons Solicitors.
And let me just say, as a lawyer, I want all my customers trading via a limited company. Your house shouldn't be on the line when you're engaging in a construction project.
Whether it's contracts or disputes or safeguarding your investment, Martin brings the clarity most homeowners are looking for to protect their investment.
A builder was able to successfully argue the contract had been frustrated, in effect rendered null and void, by the fact that he had had a heart attack.
We cut through the jargon and discuss how to protect yourself before and after things go off the rails. Building to Last with Andy Steadman. Click the link in the bio. Welcome to Building to Last. Today I'm joined by Martin de Ridder, who's a solicitor and the Managing Director of Ansons Solicitors. Martin qualified back in 2004 and heads up the firm and works across dispute resolution and employment law.
It's true.
Great. Okay, so he's been involved in a major case, include landmark High Court decision for a builder who was sued after suffering a heart attack. So we'll learn more about that. Before we dive into building side, Martin, can you give us an introduction to Ansons Solicitors? Because I know you cover a wide...
Yeah, so we... I guess it falls into two categories, sort of work that we'll do for individuals and work that we'll do for businesses. But we pretty much do all areas of law. Sometimes it's easy to say what we don't do crime, and we don't do sort of personal injury, stroke medical negligence, but we do pretty much everything else. So if you want to get divorced, I'm sure, if your wife's listening, we can help you with that. We can help you buy your house, sell your house. We can help you write your will. We can manage your estate. If on the business side of things, if you've got a dispute, an unpaid invoice, you've fallen out with your business partner, we can assist with that. If you're buying or selling a business, we've got a corporate team that deals with that side of things, and also commercial property, leases, buying property for development. We do all of that sort of stuff.
I know you've got a couple of offices, so what areas do you serve?
Yeah, so we would say sort of Staffordshire and the Black Country, really. So we've got offices in Lichfield and Cannock, which was when we originally set up in 2005. They were the two offices. We've since expanded just over the border into Sutton Coldfields. You literally go out of Staffordshire about a mile as to where our office is there in the Mere Green area of Sutton Coldfield. And most recently, we've opened up an office in Dudley. And actually, later on this year, we're expanding, and we've sort of moved premises, and we're sort of quadrupling our size there. So that's sort of growth. We're sort of back in the local economy, really, we think. And we think there's demand for our services, and we'll gladly help to offer those services to the local business and individual community. Yeah.
Great, fantastic. Let's get some knowledge out of you then in terms of building and renovation. So when it comes to construction and renovation, do you see many disputes, and kind of what do you see most often, or what do you get asked for advice on?
I mean, we see it all of the time, and it varies depending on who's involved in the particular job. We certainly see between different parts of the subcontract supply chain a lot of payment disputes. Sometimes actually the payment aspect of that isn't really what the dispute is. It'll often be about, did they agree to that variation? Who has to pay for the downtime when the project hasn't been properly managed? So we will deal with disputes like that sometimes go to adjudication, which a number of your audience will be aware of what that is. So we do get involved in those types of disputes. We'll often and do get involved sometimes when the builder hasn't performed and the customer isn't happy with the fitness for purpose or the quality of the work that's been provided. We do get involved in that type of dispute. Some of the disputes do stray into areas of sort of professional negligence. Discussing this the other day, the importance increasingly of people within the construction food chain, making sure that they have got professional indemnity insurance because they can get it relatively cheaply. It's something that, I think that all builders, if in doubt, I would get it. I'd get that in place, as well as the other insurances that you would, generally speaking, always have. Everything, unfortunately, people will fall out over. I think we went through a period, and you will have experienced this firsthand. I think it's got slightly better now, whereby some of those really big boys in the food chain were almost, on occasions, using their own knowledge of the payment process to completely sabotage some of their own subcontractors' cash flow. And as a result of that, lots of people would, catch a cold, and people down the almost would be prepared to allow some of their suppliers, some of their subcontractors to go insolvent so they could manage their own cash flow. That has my perception of it in terms of the number of disputes I see. Certainly the people who had been directly engaged by the government have got on big projects have got a lot better than that. But there was a period, maybe 10 years ago, 5 years ago, when that was really prevalent.
I know several business owners who fell to that and got hit really hard, especially in the commercial contracts. I think that's kind of what you're looking at. So your commercial scaffolders, and just strangling them, not paying them on time, and then they become insolvent because they've got no cash flow coming in. I've heard that a bit less, but yeah.
I think what's happened is a lot of builders have got more savvy in relation to the process themselves. Yeah. Once they've been through the odd construction or payment dispute, they get their ducks in a row a lot more in terms of making the applications for payments at the right time, getting their paperwork correct, making sure that the site manager or whoever's in charge on site is signing the variation and keeping that written, record. Yeah. Dare I even say, WhatsApp helps these days because they often have got a written instruction that's been given to them. Hopefully, a lot of the builders will have something slightly more evidential than that, but there is a little bit less of that. I would say these days. You occasionally get involved in, I don't know if you've been a party to a smash and grab adjudication, whereby you typically, the employer, the customer, has failed to comply with their own payment process, and sometimes the construction company can turn around and say, well, look, you've missed the deadline, you've got to pay me. And if you don't, I can get an award from the adjudicator in quite a short period of time. And to the extent you've got other issues with my work or anything else, we'll have that dispute at the end. Yeah.
So you've touched upon a few things there, which I see you can have problems with. Is either the contract itself, so a dispute over what that actually contains, the communication of maybe the contract and the variations within that, or the expectations of work, or the way that's delivered. So it seems like the communication element's got better, maybe from the subcontractors themselves, in order keeping that records and
that would be my that would be my experience, and I would say as well that the paper. I mean, actually, compared to other industries in which I see disputes, maybe people involved in the construction industry, maybe builders don't feel this, but the contracts are actually quite good. A JCT is quite readable, I think, for a layperson. Yeah. And I think that a lot of the different sort of contracts that you guys will be asked to sign and the subcontracts are in plain English, and pretty much, I think, would say what most people would think they would say if you said, well, if this happens, what should I do? A variation that it requires typically somebody signing off at some point in the food chain. But that's what most of us would expect it to say. If you were digging foundations on a building and actually it turns out the engineer's report was inaccurate and you're now drilling through you'll have to tell me something that's extremely difficult to dig through, so it changes the nature of the work.
You found something different on the ground, because that is a big unknown in construction. You never know what you're going to find when you start
drilling down.
Yeah, so I mean, if that variation happens, that's.
Well, the expectation would be, and it is recorded in those contracts, that that's something that isn't anticipated, that there would, the subcontractor should be compensated properly for that, if it's going to mean that the job is going to take them a lot more time to do. And the reality of it is, what you want to see there is the communications very early in that process, not when they're expecting to be paid at the end of the process, to turn around and say, by the way, this is going to take longer. Can we have a discussion about that? Can we meet and discuss that and see if we can agree and record that agreement about the extra charge, in writing, if it's all possible.
So you mentioned JCT there, JCT contract. So can you just quickly summarise that for me, please?
Well, JCT, it stands for something. C doesn't stand for contract, does it? Or it's the actual. It's a standard form contract that is drafted by, I think it might be the RICS, but if it's not them, it'll be the Judicial Contracts Tribunal or whatever it stands for. They produce a template contract. You can then write stuff in for the specifics of the contract, who the parties are, timescale, what's to be paid in terms of liquidated damages, if any, if the project is late, and a whole host of, there are a menu of options, but it's in a standard form that is written in plain English. I think it's got like an accreditation that says it's from the Plain English Board or whomever they are that records that that it is written in understandable English. Yeah,
like I said, very readable, and you can be under no illusion then what the terms and conditions are, and it's a standard set of terms and conditions that look after both parties. And it's written in that kind of way.
That's why I like them, because you will sometimes see contracts that are, when a party tries to get you under their own terms and conditions, that sometimes are almost drafted in a one-sided way and can almost be silly, that almost doesn't require the party to the contract to do the main thing they're meant to be doing under the contract, can't be liable at all for anything ever. A lot of those contracts are unenforceable, can be challenged under the Unfair Contract Terms Act if they're a company's standard terms and conditions. But the JCTs are written in a balanced way, in a fair way.
Yeah.
And I would encourage people to use them. Save that. You've got two things that then become important. One, that the bespoke parts, the parts that you're writing in, both parties have to be clear about what they're writing in there. Yeah. And I do think the builder, it's important the builder or the subcontractor properly does read and understand what they're obliged to do, doesn't get themselves in a mess by not submitting the application for payment at the relevant time. It's all the process for agreeing a variation. These things are important that you do understand, because ultimately, as a builder, you need to know what you are required to do. Yeah. And also, how do I get paid? That's really important. We're all businesses here, right? And you've got to understand those two fundamental things. What am I required to do, and how do I get paid? I think that when a JCT or similar contract is used, it should be pretty easy for most people to. You don't need to be a qualified lawyer to understand them. And actually, what I do tend to find, somebody who's been involved in construction litigation for years, a lot of the time, my clients will know those contracts a lot better than I do.
Yeah. Yeah, so that's the first thing then. So in a construction environment, domestic construction environment, that's the first thing to say. Well, not the first thing, but that before you start, you've got to have that contract that protects a lot of cases going through. Have you ever seen a case with no contract? Because I think at that stage, that's really difficult. I'd imagine, I've not been involved, but I'd imagine that's difficult from a solicitation point of view to then hold up a verbal agreement rather than a contract.
Yeah, a contract can be a verbal agreement. Yeah. And indeed, in construction, post-2009, that's explicitly recognised, and a verbal contract can still be taken to a payment dispute in terms of adjudication. But if you are certainly from the perspective of a builder who's servicing the consumer market, in both directions, having it written down, what you've agreed to do, when you've agreed to do it, is something that's really important. And yeah, it's much harder. You can litigate or pursue payment when there's nothing written down, but it becomes much more difficult when a court is being asked to determine who's telling the truth, who said what to who. Judges, adjudicators, arbitrators, anyone who's involved in a legal dispute would much rather have a document that they can rely on.
Rather than WhatsApp messages.
WhatsApp messages, WhatsApp messages can be, a contract can be recorded in a WhatsApp message.
Yeah,
you know, it would be considered to be in writing. Your typical thing that, again, that it doesn't get recorded in writing is, and every builder will have experienced this, is as they're going through the job, in the domestic situation, the customer wants to change something, change the type of brick. Yeah. Can that wall come out and a little bit further out? That is sometimes when those changes where it is really important to say, that's fine, I can. It is going to cost a little bit more, and we need to agree to what that cost is going to be. Yeah. Sometimes some of that can be anticipated in a contract, but often, even when a builder has got a contract, the changes don't get recorded, and that can be subsequently when both parties, a dispute can arise.
Yeah, it's and you, to be honest, you would be relying on WhatsApp messages and so forth then, because as you're in the midst of a project, it's hard to go back to a formalised quotation. I've run a business myself, to then...
Well, a WhatsApp business or a WhatsApp message or an email is better than is better than just a verbal agreement, And can you confirm that the above is approved? An email that says that. I think that sometimes though, and I get that it's awkward, but that email asking for that approval. And explain to your customer that, look, this is to stop us falling out at a later date. If you now want me to do that, I can do that, but I'm going to need you to confirm that we've agreed that that's what the additional charge is, or indeed sometimes that is your instruction, because you will have builders who are watching this who've got into the situation where at the end of the project, because nothing's written down, the customer has denied that they changed the instruction, even though that has happened.
Yeah. I mean, I think we can pick good customers because that kind of thing hasn't happened. But I could say that could easily happen, especially when you're, say, finishing a project and it's like, can you do this? Can you do this? And wants to see the labour going forward. There's always more that you can do.
Oh, well, listen, it does not surprise me that, I always, as a dispute lawyer, I often will only ever see the bad when this has gone wrong. My clients don't come to me in either direction, typically when there hasn't been a problem. So, I might have a bit of a cynical and jaundiced view on some of these things, but I have seen disputes about literally everything and anything over the years.
So you mentioned earlier sometimes the dispute's the other way then, so the customer's not paying. So that's, again, something we've not had.
You're a good selector of customers. I think that maybe a lot of my clients tend to be the builders themselves, but one of my clients, I remember it for years, has said, there's lots of programmes on the television about rogue traders, and there should be one about rogue customers, and I think that there are people out there who will ask builders to do work, try and get, and not be in a position to pay for it, or indeed if they there's some variation along the way, and try and get out of paying for that. You can be protected, you've alluded to it earlier, by how you structure the contract can mean that those disputes are less likely to arise, or at least less likely to have significant consequences. But there are road customers out there who sometimes have just got virtually no intention of paying and will really, raise every single little complaint. And of course, sometimes some of the complaints will be valid. It's a dirty, messy game building something here. It's a lot of the time, and things can and do go wrong. Sometimes builders are prepared to take a problem on the chin themselves if you're digging down some sort of foundations and actually, there's no engineer's report or anything like that, and it turns out that it's going to take a lot more work to dig out those foundations on the extension. Certain builders will just take a view, well, I guess I could have surveyed that before I did the work.
Yeah.
If it's only going to add a week onto the project, perhaps everyone's happy. But if it fundamentally changes the project, at certain times, hopefully your contract will cover this situation off, but your contract should have something in there with some assumptions that, is assuming that I'm digging into normal ground, that I'm not, that there's not going to be a load of whatever might be there, asbestos, or you'd be a better person to give the examples of something that would fundamentally change it than I would, I bet.
I think really it comes back down to the communication again of the contracts. So although the client can read those contracts because they are in plain English, they might not understand some of the nuances of the work.
Yeah.
So, for instance, if you say it might be a strip or raft foundation, they're not going to understand.
Oh, I don't know what either of those two things mean.
Yeah, so it's the communication of this is what we've priced. Now, you may hit this, and then if we do, because hopefully you've got a gist of how likely that is, then the likelihood payments from that is going to be roughly here.
Yeah.
So it's a communication of where the elements are which are relatively unknown.
I think that's right, and I think that all the way around here, if this is like the Weather Channel, sort of constant updates and those communication flows, the less likely you are to have the disputes at a later point. Even if sometimes you're prepared to sort of take one on the chin as the builder, I think that might be the case, but for chunks of the project, but then it might start to go majorly underwater if you've got to keep doing that, if we keep finding problems. And that's why I think recording all of this in writing from WhatsApp or an email or a letter is always the way to go.
Okay, so contract then updates. Yeah, I think that's definitely a learning lesson for me, the asking for approval and make sure that's documented. Yeah, that's a good way to put it, really. Okay, so the High Court case then, there's some interesting lessons from that when you touched upon that.
We were having a chat before we've recorded this today, and it is on my website. So there's only two construction cases two cases actually in my career that have been reported, both of them within the actual trials occurred within a month of one another. The first one where my client was a chap called Mr. Rochester, and he unfortunately was on an extension and suffered a heart attack. And the case became something of a landmark case because it was one of the first cases where a builder was able to successfully argue the contract had been frustrated, in effect rendered null and void by the fact that he had had a heart attack. Whereas normally, in contracts such as that, the expectation would be, well, look, he's contracted to do the work. He should find somebody else to finish it off for him or get his more junior members of staff to carry out that work. Mm-hmm. The judge found in the case that, no, they'd picked this specific individual to do the work. He'd done work for their family in the past. And because they had specifically, it was important to him that he did the work. That meant that when he had a heart attack and was unable to do the work, that the contract was frustrated. Okay. We'll put the link to the case in the bio. It's online. Your viewers can read it. It's about 12 pages or something like that.
Yeah, that's interesting because to go to High Court, if you build a suffered heart attack, it depends how the company's structured, doesn't it? Because if that's
this was a sole trader, one-man band here. Yeah.
Sole trader, small team, maybe got a couple of subcontractors or people who works with regularly. If he suffers a heart attack, obviously I think naturally most people would just find that contract's frustrated because, like you said, they've got that one person and he's not got a big enough
His
team
customers didn't, they sued him. So, yeah, we were the defendant.
Yeah, exactly. So that's a bit harsh in that case. I'm glad the builder won that one, to be honest. I'm not always...
Yeah, no. It is one of the cases where definitely I felt I was on the side of the angels in the case. But as I say, people can read what happened. It's all out there.
No, that's good. So... yeah, like I said, it depends how you set up. If you've got a big enough team to fulfil that contract, I guess that's.
Yeah, I mean, for the most part, most of the people watching this who are builders themselves, these days, you'll be trading via a limited company.
Yep.
And let me just say, as a lawyer, I'd want all my customers trading via a limited company. Okay. Your house shouldn't be on the line when you're engaging in a construction project. Limited company means that you've got limited liability, that if there is a problem or a mistake, perhaps your insurers picks it up, but if the insurers don't pick it up, the company might well go bump and go into an insolvency process, but you personally are not liable, save in relation to any sort of personal guarantees that you may have in relation to the company's trade. So, I mean, I would say that for most builders, especially in this day and age with potential different forms of liability that you might have, you must be trading via a limited company.
Yeah. But the counter argument from a consumer side to that is a lot of people think, I guess anyone in construction probably knows the kind of characters who will create a limited company, wait till they've done a really shoddy job, close the company, and there leaves very little liability on them. So
that is definitely
it can protect the wrong types, but
yes, it can, and I think that really from the customer's point of view, from the consumer's point of view, getting references, finding as much out as you possibly can about who you are employing is really important. Up to a point, though, I think that some of the real cowboys out there won't have a limited company, or certainly a valid limited company, that they might well be trading in their own name, and they just don't care. Sue me, if they're gone, of no fixed abode and everything else like that. So at least with a limited company, they've got to have a registered office. They've got to register a person of significant control. I get it. There are people who will bump companies, and lots of people watching this will have experienced that. But I suspect, for the most part, consumers are going to be engaging builders who are trading via limited companies.
Yeah. All I wanted to reiterate the point is that just in limited status, because I have found some customers who think they're a limited company, they're fully legit. The other thing that they can do is check them out at Companies House, see the history of the company, see the registration, and like you said, the people of significant control in that company.
Yeah, you can read the accounts and see the size of the company. And actually, one of the things that's changing later this year actually is that sort of back to the future a little bit, they're requiring companies to file, even quite small companies, to file full accounts. Much fuller
the
accounts.
profit and loss statements, not just sort of an asset register, which a good accountant can read that, but you should get a much better idea as to whether the company's of substance or not. Yeah, if they've got some money in the bank.
Yes, albeit I think what any accountant will tell you is it only shows that they've got money on the bank on the specific day that the balance sheet is drawn up. The next day they could well have bed and breakfasted that money straight out.
To quickly summarise that then, we're on topic. So from the homeowner side, you said, what should they kind of almost make sure that's there and not skip on? So you've mentioned references, so obviously they can look at that. So is there any specific ways you think they could obtain those? Well,
I mean, these days we've got the online versions of those, and I know that there are ways to manipulate those, but there are those referral websites, the trusted recommendation websites out there. Not foolproof by any means, but they are there. You can ask to look on their social media about them posting other jobs. A lot of builders will have posted on there about other jobs they've been on. If you know that person, why wouldn't you give them a ring and find out what sort of job they did? I think that's what I would be doing if I'm a customer. I think I would also want to be engaging a builder who had got a proper set of terms and conditions and have presented you with a contract and a plan, that would give me a lot of reassurance. I'd want a builder to clearly set out when and how he needs to be paid. You know, he will want a certain amount up front to buy some of the materials to commence the work. He shouldn't be wanting too much of that up front. That would be a bit of a red flag from my perspective.
What a sensible, justifiable amount that he can clearly clarify.
He's got to. I'm no builder, but he's got to go and buy the cement and the bricks, right? You know, and I think that there should be. I don't know what you would charge typically up front on a job. Would it be 20 or 30% as some sort of initial deposit?
No, it was 10%.
Okay,
yeah, and then there'd be interims pretty swiftly after that.
Each month, typically, would you go say?
Every 2 weeks.
Every 2 weeks, yeah.
Because every 2 weeks there's usually a significant enough change on site for that to happen. But again, in the contract, set out as best as you can, because obviously weather and everything determines that might fluctuate slightly, but as best as you can predetermine the flow of the work and the payments. It's the schedule.
If I'm a customer, a builder who sets that out clearly in writing, that's going to give me a certain amount of confidence that they know what they're doing and they're going to do it properly.
Yeah. So the other things you said, so would you ask for insurances?
Yeah, I mean, first of all, they will be obliged to have public liability and employer's liability insurance. All businesses pretty much are required to have both of those insurances, and they will have a certificate from their insurer that shows that they've got it. I wouldn't go near anyone to do anything for you, from building from power washing your drive to whatever it might be. If they haven't got the insurances in place, I wouldn't be using them. That's because if they do damage to your property or indeed to somebody in your house, you know that there is a policy that you could pursue. Unfortunately, most builders do not have what you might call commercial liability insurance, something that they do have, I'm told, in America, but we don't tend to have in this country. In other words, a policy that kicks in if they haven't done a very good job. It's not really readily available. There's not a market for it. Yeah. If your builder if there's a design element to what they're doing, if they're the one who is almost, and that does sometimes happen, designing the conservatory for you, you would want also for them to have what's called professional indemnity insurance, PI insurance.
Yeah, I've gone back to that because I don't think that's what a lot of builders carry. I think a lot of builders will expect the professional side to be the design side, to be the architects and so forth.
And for the most part, that they will be the professionals. But if you are doing any element of design as a builder, that is on you, right? Which you can be sucked into that. Now, and also from a builder's perspective, it isn't that, you're not going to be paying thousands of pounds extra for your whole policy.
Yeah, because it depends on the policy, doesn't it? Because I know architects we work with, they might complain that they're professional.
Solicitors, I would show you mine versus architects' professional indemnity policy and solicitors' professional indemnity policies. I wouldn't even say on here what it is, but it's a large amount of money. But a builder is adding that on to their general schedule of insurances. I was discussing this in relation to a locksmith, and so all of their insurances were sort of in the region of £300 or £400 a year, and that covered them for because including PI.
That's a good tip for business owners, for builders, because although we don't, sometimes we do design, because if we're doing an extension without plans, so one that's under permitted development, for instance, and we're just building it because we know what we're doing, you are responsible for the design. You design as you go, you're selecting the material, so all the design element is on you at that point, I'd imagine. And you have to sign off as the designer for the building control certificate. So you sign off as designer and the contractor.
This happened on a conservatory roof I'd put on my house the other week, and we had to sign that off at the end, and they designed it, built it, whatever, did the full work. So it was quite a good job from what I saw.
Did they want you to sign off as the designer?
No, they designed it. But they designed it. I mean, they were design build, you know. It was already built, actually. They just had to put... It was one of these ones to stop your conservatory being absolutely boiling.
To put a warm roof on it.
Basically.
Yeah. Okay, so I mean, any other tips for builders before we move on then? So obviously, contract protects both parties. Get the professional indemnity.
Yeah, I mean, getting that contract written down, regular communication, and keeping records of that communication. Yeah, if it is WhatsApp's fine, but make sure you're saving the WhatsApps, right? So they're not auto-deleting after 24 hours or whatever. You need to make sure that you're not doing any of those things, and you keep that record. But you often ask for the agreement back so that they have approved whatever it might be. And I think most of the time a customer or consumer will be happy to say, yeah, I agree with that, no problem. And then you've got that consent, and then you've got the fundamentals of a contract, which is an offer and an acceptance, and it's recorded in writing. So it will be a binding contract.
It should be honoured, yeah. I've got a series called Renovation Red Flags where we highlight the building issues that homeowners could be alert to.
Okay.
Is there anything you could spotlight legally as the project's going forward? Anything you kind of could spot from both parties, maybe? Any early interventions, things that you kind of come up with, think maybe something that is not quite right? Well,
I think that in terms of a lot of that, actually, will them not doing the stuff that I've just talked about in both directions. If there are delays and you're not having that communication, that would be a red flag from me. A lot of consumers will say, my builder's not showed up for the last 2 weeks, and there might be a good reason for that, but that does become a bit of a red flag for me if when they are not showing up for that next 2 weeks, it could be that the guy's been allocated to the job has had a heart attack, and the other lad who works on it relies on him for a lift, and there could be a good reason for that. It could be that there's another project that they're working on somewhere else has gone massively wrong. They need to dedicate some time and resource to that. They'll come back to you. Perhaps they'll, will agree some kind of discount or something along those lines. I think that it's the communication and the absence of a communication when there is an issue or a problem that would cause a red flag for me, for sure.
Yeah. With legal disputes, I know a few solicitors.
Yes.
And I know a lot of them talk about mediation now rather than litigation. So how can you see these disputes that might happen with homeowners and builders? Is there a mediation route rather than go through court?
So the reality of going through court is that ultimately litigation, unless you've got insurance to back you up to cover your legal costs, is really expensive. Prohibitively expensive, actually. What that often will mean is that at a very early stage of even if you do take it to court, a judge is going to turn around to you as part of the process and almost impose upon you mediation. And a mediation is a form of what we call as solicitors alternative dispute resolution. So that's not a judge deciding anything, but rather a mediator. A lot of the time there is a service offered by the small claims court and in effect a telephone meeting will be set up, and that person will ring the parties to the dispute and try and see if they can come up with common ground and a settlement. The reality of it is you can do that before you've even taken it to court, and parties do try and get their heads together and try and get it resolved without the expense of lawyers and court processes. There are mediators out there who do offer those services if both parties are prepared to participate in it before a court case starts. There are professional mediators out there who will mediate in a construction dispute for sure.
Yeah. So as we wrap up then, what's the biggest misconception you kind of hear about construction? Is there something you kind of see people say and it's not?
Well, you've alluded to it a little bit yourself about, a verbal contract is not worth the paper it's written on. You can definitely have a verbal contract. I spend my life trying to partially complete contracts and work out what the parties have agreed. You can, provided somebody's made an offer and that can be implied by conduct, and somebody's accepted that offer, there is consideration. In other words, you're doing something for a payment, and it's something that there is an intent to create legal relations, that can be a contract.
Yeah, you've definitely opened my eyes a bit more to that, because we had another guest on who had a bad project.
Yes.
And that was all verbal. And so when he looked at it, he was scaring through the messages to see if there's anything there to show that. But a lot of his was phone calls. But even then, you can probably still, as a solicitor, go through that and just see an intent to supply. So the goods should be supplied.
Well, there's a large part of the Supply of Goods and Services Act will imply, as currently constituted, will imply terms and conditions that if you're providing a service, that your service is of satisfactory quality and the work that you've done is fit for purpose. And that will be implied into every contract to supply services. So yeah, there can still be a contractual or legal dispute that lawyers can make arguments in relation to. Yeah. Much better if everyone involved is writing down what they've agreed. And as I said, if you're the builder, what you're going to do and how you're going to get paid, and I guess from the consumer's point of view, what you want them to do, and when you do have to pay them. And if you get those two fundamental things written down, that will probably eliminate 99% of all legal disputes. That and keeping the communication flowing during the project.
Yeah, no, that's great. So there's definitely some good tips there for homeowners, because I bat on about these things. So it's good to have a solicitor's input on what that should be set up, and also some definitely learnings about professional indemnity, which I wasn't quite sure we needed.
Well, listen, I'm not saying that as a builder that you definitely need it.
No,
a lot of the time you don't. But if it's going to cost you an extra 50 quid, why wouldn't you get it? Speak to your broker is what I would say in that regard.
But the other thing is, a lot of our clients, again, whether they trust us more than other people, but we don't often get asked for insurances. It's probably 1 in every 10 customers who ask for those, which again should probably be a bit more common.
But you're not insulted or offended if they ask for that, are you?
Not at all. I just send it straight over. I've got just one sheet, lists all the different areas of cover. So
I'd say to customers, always ask for that.
Yeah.
Jump on Company's House, as you said earlier. Do you really want them building your extension if they've not filed their accounts on time or their confirmation statement? There's an application from the registrar to strike them off. Would you want them doing your building work? And the answer is no, right?
I saw that 2 weeks ago. Where I was competing with another builder and I'd not heard of the builder before, so I did my check-in as a customer should. And just not there. They'd had the what was that specific thing you just said, where you've got a
strike off?
A strike off, yeah. They had a position to strike the company off, and so that company hadn't been formed for 3 years. It'd been struck off, but they're still trading. So
well, I mean, the reality of it is they're not still trading. By the way, they're purporting to still trade, but that company is without wanting to sound too much like Monty Python, it does not exist. It's a dead company.
It's right, but a lot of people don't realise they can go on Company's House and find these public records if it is a limited company, and also click on the director, see if they're director of multiple companies or whatever else they're involved in, which is great. Okay, so thanks for the legal expertise. So a quick mention for Ansons again. So where can people get in touch if they need any expertise?
Just about to launch a new website, but if you put Ansons, Ansons, into Google, I'd like to think you will find us. We're on all the social medias as well. We've even got a TikTok channel these days.
Okay. Yeah, it's quite forward thinking.
Forward thinking, yeah. We've YouTube. We've got a podcast that on a fortnightly basis.
Okay. What's that podcast called?
It's called Ansons Solicitors Podcast.
Okay.
But we are developing the Common Law History podcast as well, which is all about historic case law, the sort of, talking through some landmark cases over the past 1,000 years, going right back to 1066 and everything onward from there. So, yeah, you can see us there, and you'll easily be able to get us on the telephone and we can chat about whatever legal issue that you've got.
Perfect. Thank you very much. So, yeah, let's end that podcast. If you want to follow Ansons and follow Ansons Solicitors on social media, and we'll see you soon. Thank you.